came back on June 18th, 1983. The TV production improved drastically. There was more than 30 people in the building. There was actually probably about 100 and maybe 100, 125 people. And it was a whole lot better. My dad took the ring and kind of catty cornered it. But we had a lot of people in there. And it vastly improved over, and there were people there. Jack, what was the next card, June 18th? You have that card?
Yeah, that's Bill Dundee beat Dutch Mantell. Carl Fergie and Norman Frederick Charles III beat the Fantastic Ones. The Stray Cat beat Larry Hare. French Angel and the Bounty Hunter beat Ray Candy and Joe Lightfoot. Joe Lightfoot was subbing for Gerald Finley. And Steve-O beat Bill Rose.
Hey, what we're talking about, did anybody ever know what happened to Gerald Finley? He just disappeared.
Gosh. Yeah, I haven't heard from him in years.
He was very good. I always liked Gerald Finley. What we're talking about, we got to talk about Dirty Dutch Mantel. You know, Bill Dundee told back then the only office people were actually my dad and Bill Dundee. That was it. There was no other office personnel but those two people. And so they would do the actual booking at the Falcons. I think it was the Falcons Rest in Atlanta, Georgia. It was actually in Riverdale, Georgia. And I remember Bill said, I'm bringing Dutch in. I'm going to have Dutch there because Dutch knows how to build the town. And with me and him, we should be able to build. And you know what? He was right. Dutch did know how to. He was by that time he was seasoned, and he really knew how to bring the people back. Because the first week it started out, it had about 300 people. The next week it came back, and it had about 500 people. So each week it was building momentum. What did you think about Dirty Dutch Mantel, Michael St. John?
You know, I got to watch a great series of matches that I think a lot of people will remember from back in the early 70s when Nick Goulas was booking. He booked Dutch and Randy Savage against each other for it seemed like a year. And they didn't have wrestling matches. They just got into each other's face and fought like dogs. And every week it would be a screw job on this guy, or this guy'd get beat by counted out, or this guy would get injured and they'd stop the match. But it just went on forever and ever. And it built, the people built, and the people built, and the people built. And I forget what the blow off was, but I always respected the athletic ability of both men. But Randy Savage was a true athlete, without a doubt. Dutch Mantell, I call a brainiac, because Dutch Mantell is a brilliant person, and he could give a great interview. He'd record a great promo, but he could think. And he not only thought and would give tips to me of how to say or how to build up or whatever, but he would help other wrestlers as well. And I've had some people tell me that Dutch doesn't like me. I have no idea why not, because I think Dutch is fantastic. But and he's obviously done very, very well with his national TV exposure with the dark side of the ring and all that stuff. But I just really felt that was bringing Dutch in was a stroke of genius, because I think you're absolutely right, Jack and Brett, because Dutch could build a town. And he was so smart, and and the other thing I always loved about Dutch is Dutch always thought, in my opinion, 2 steps ahead. So he not only was thinking about what was going to happen today or with the matches tonight, he was thinking about what they were going to do next week and the week after and probably beyond. And I think that's a secret to his success.
Yeah, I think that they actually did bring in Dutch Mantell in. I think it was a very smart move. And like I said, you could tell they knew what they were going to do to build to the next week. And there's no doubt Dutch Mantell, one of the greatest wrestlers that's ever been in the ring. And when you put him and Bill Dundee together, they're going to have some great matches.
Brad, if I can add something here, you were talking about the studio. One of the funny things about this whole thing, and Jack, you'll appreciate this, is every week I would get to the studio, and I'd get there 2.5 hours before the show for the meetings and everything, and the ring would be set up. And one week it would look like Memphis. The curtains would be very, bland curtains, and the ring was the centerpiece and the light over the ring, and it would look just like the Memphis studio. The next week you get there and you got all the bells and whistles of Georgia Championship Wrestling all in. And it went on. One week it was like Jarrett did the set, and the next week Ole did the set. And it went on. There was not a consistent, if you look back at the tapes, there's not a consistent set in that.
And they also changed from the beginning. If you remember, it was called World Championship Wrestling presents Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars. And they had the big banner up there. And then they opened up Ole actually had an opening done, but Jarrett didn't like that opening. So he decided he was going to use his own. It changed from Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars just to Championship Wrestling. Now, at some point, it may have changed back, but because it was funny. I did not, and this is a question that I think needs to be asked. Did Ole and Jarrett really think they could work together? I mean, do you think they thought they could?
I think in the beginning, I think they were thinking this can work. And I think it was to the benefit of both, because you got to remember when Jarrett bought out or got Nick Gulas out of the business, bought him out of the business, they were running Chattanooga and they were ready to shut down Chattanooga because it was sort of out of the footprint of their travel of the boys. And so it was sort of planned that it was either going to go to Knoxville or to the Knoxville folks, or it was going to go to Georgia. And Atlanta was only an hour 20, hour and a half down the road. So it made sense for Atlanta. And I think it was a way for Jerry to maintain a presence with the promotion that he had bought from Nick Gulas in Chattanooga, as well as bringing the quality of the athletic prowess in the ring up a notch or two.
Well, it's funny because when Jerry Jarrett called my dad in Mid-Atlantic while Dory Funk Jr. was the booker at the time, so he was helping Dory Funk Jr. in Mid-Atlantic. He called him. He said, "Well, I'm going to do a joint venture with Ole Anderson." And Dad said, "Well, I just got fired from Ole Anderson." He had fired him in March of '83. Him and Les Thatcher got fired the same exact day. But he said, "Do you really think," he told Jarrett, "do you really think that you're going to work with him?" Because this is what he'd always say, because Dad would come up with finishes. It was Dad's ideal to beat Dusty Rhodes up in the parking lot. And it took him forever to get him to do that. He said, "I can't believe you're going to do that Tennessee crap." That's what he'd always say. Anything he came up with, Buzz Sawyer and Tommy Ridge out in the parking lot, he got so mad at Dad. "That was Tennessee crap. Don't do that." So he said, "You really think it's going to last?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I think it'll do well." Jack, an Ole Anderson, and you talked to him a few times.
Yeah.
What would you have thought when they said, "Okay, they're going to be a partnership going on"?
I don't see how anybody was a partner with Ole. Now saying that, I have immense respect for Ole. To me, he is my favorite booker of all time. But knowing what I do know about him, what I've heard about him and everything, Ole was a one-man show. Everybody else just, followed along and manned the ship, but he was the captain.
Oh, yeah. And the thing about Ole, too, is Ole was a rough guy, but Ole was also a nice person when he wanted to be.
He was. He certainly was.
My favorite, I only met Ole twice, one at Georgia Championship Wrestling the day I was down to do the thing for the promotion of this particular show. And then the second time it was in Cleveland, Tennessee. And Brett, I think it was a thing. You were up there, the gentleman that owns the radio station up in Cleveland and the low power TV and all. We did a show about 5 or 6 years ago with Bill Dundee, may have been 7 years ago. And Bill was there. And Bill told me, he said, "I want you to come up and do this and do the commentary. And your partner's going to be Ole Anderson." And I went, "Oh." And he said, "No, Ole." But anyway, I got introduced to Ole like 15 minutes before we went on, and Ole was his wife was assisting him, and we got to talking, and we got to not really know each other a lot before the matches started, but between the matches or during the intermission, he wanted a water, and I went and got him a water or whatever. We started talking, and then by the end of the night, I ended up spending an extra 45 minutes up there talking to Ole because we sort of bonded. And 2 days later, I got a copy of his book in the mail. And he said, "It was great working with you. You're a real pro. It's autographed, Ole Anderson." And it just took me by total surprise. But Jack, I have to agree with you. When he wanted it, and whatever it was that we sort of bonded together over, I'm proud to say it, but I agree with you. One heck of a booker. When you look at the things he came up with on his own, sheer genius.
I am not ashamed to say that I still book shows and I reuse a majority of his ideas. I tweak them a little bit, but you can't do much better than what he did. It was just great stuff.